Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Drew Lichtenberg, an Associate Director here at the Shakespeare Theatre Company, and welcome to the old school style Shakespeare Hour live, back online in your living room, just like old times. Tonight we are discussing a show that is currently running at the Klein Theatre, described by the Washington Post in paper, I believe today, as ingenious, and also featuring the breathtaking talents of my beloved colleague, fellow STC Associate Director, Whitney White. The show is Macbeth in Stride, and Whitney wrote, composed, and is starring in the show, an utterly magnetic, irreplaceable force of personality who is joining us tonight. Are you there, Whitney?
Hi, I'm here. That was a wonderful, generous intro. Thank you.
And Whitney, since you are staying with us here in Washington, D.C., in our beautiful, glamorous actor housing, tell me, how is D.C. treating you? How are you feeling about this kind of artistic home away from your home?
I'm loving DC as always. It's such a wonderful place to be, from the food to the people to the coffee shops to just the energy of the town. It's just a wonderful place to make work. And our audiences have been amazing. So I feel nothing but positive things.
Yeah, it's great to have you here with us. My wife saw the show the other week and said, I didn't know Whitney could do that. I knew she was this brilliant director, but I didn't know that she could also sing and also be a playwright and also act. A true five-tool talent you are, Whitney.
Thank you. That's very sweet of her.
Yes, well, yes, from her mouth to your ears. I am also joined by my co-host tonight, and equally beloved colleague, STC's Director of Equity and Belonging, a member of the STC artistic team and senior staff here, Leanne Noble. Hello, Leanne.
Hello, Dr. Drew.
And Leanne,
Yes.
you're also here in DC, but what's your day? I saw you earlier at the theater. What's your day been like, or what's Macbeth in Stride been like for you, Leanne?
Oh, it's been good. I'm loving that we have this show in our space right now. It's been wonderful to connect with Macbeth in Stride and with Whitney White. It's truly a homecoming. It really is a homecoming. Yes, but I'm excited. I'm excited to be back here on Shakespeare Hour Live as well. It's been a little while.
Well, our doors are always open to you. So, Leanne, you're going to be moderating tonight. I'm going to be sort of co-hosting and also guesting as a panelist talking about Shakespeare. We'll see how it goes as we discuss Shakespeare's Scottish play, as well as Whitney White's Macbeth in Stride. And I should say, if you believe in curses, we are going to say the M word. I don't think it's possible to avoid saying the M word, but it's okay because it's part of a different title. And maybe I'll be like Laurence Olivier and have my artistic director die of a stroke.
Oh my goodness, Drew! It's the month of Halloween. Be careful. Be careful.
I believe Olivier was starring in a production of the Scottish play when his artistic director died at the dress rehearsal before opening. So that did not happen to us, luckily, fortunately. You're bringing us good luck, Whitney, in this October month. And also, last but certainly not least, I want to introduce another beloved colleague, a jolly fellow, STC's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications, Neil Rachapo, who is with us on camera tonight, but is also over in the other room monitoring and moderating the live chat, and will be sharing questions and comments from the viewers with us. Hello, Neil, are you there?
It's true. I am here. Hello to everyone. It's very surreal as someone who's seen just about every episode of Shakespeare Hour Live to suddenly find myself on the show. It's like I've walked down Sesame Street or something. Like I'm suddenly in Don Draper's office. It's just surreal to be here, but happy to be here and happy to have people writing in on YouTube tonight. Please, as the conversation goes on, we want to hear from you. It's your chance to ask Whitney White questions about her amazing show. I look forward to checking in later and letting you know what folks want to know specifically about the show.
And I'm sure you have some questions as well, Neil. Andy Warhol, I believe, said in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. So the future is calling you, Neil. You had to come on and be a star with us on the Shakespeare.
The future is now. Thank you for giving me my 15 minutes. I'm enjoying it very much.
Or as another character says in another play, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. And maybe we can get into that because it's also treated in this play in a fascinating way. But Leonie, I want to give you the floor to sort of like take the lead here in asking Whitney and maybe me some questions about the show.
Absolutely, let's go. Macbeth in Stride is such a unique project, and I wonder, Whitney, what drew you to examine and take on Lady Macbeth?
I just, I had everyone comes into contact with Shakespeare at different times in their lives. It's very typical for people growing up in the US and going through the US education system to encounter Shakespeare for the first time in high school. And so that was one of those plays I remember. I had a literature teacher in Chicago gave it to us. And of course, it made a huge impression on me because it was so unlike other stories. There were witches and schemes and war and all these exciting colors. And then later on in graduate school at Brown, every actor has to kind of work on a scene, a big scene in their second year. And Annie Scaria, an incredible actor I really admire and love, gave me and my partner, my scene partner at the time, the dagger scene. And I went on this wormhole with a play that never really ended. And I couldn't believe how contemporary she sounded, how alike other women that I knew alive in the now she sounded. And the whole thing just felt like rock and roll to me, this kind of ill-fated couple that goes about things entirely the wrong way. And her bluntness, her directness seemed very, very unique to me, and it just always has.
Thank you. Yes, yes. It's so interesting to dig into the meaning behind it after watching it and taking it in. So I'm so glad we have these moments. Drew. Now, Lady Macbeth, there are also some other Shakespeare characters that Whitney gets into. What do you think, what ways do you think that this play prompts us to re-examine these roles that we've known for so long?
Well, just hearing Whitney talk about the wormhole, right, that she got sucked into when she was given this kind of scene assignment of the dagger scene, and then all of a sudden it's like this whole universe opens up to you, which is, common with lots of Shakespeare's plays. But I think that there's something specifically about the Scottish play or about Macbeth, or even more detailed than that, the Macbeths, right? Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, this central couple that I do think is unique in Shakespeare's plays, right? It's one of the only plays in which we see a couple that is in the prime of their life, that are obviously very sexually attracted to each other, that have a kind of healthy love life, and yet also something is rotten at the core of it, or something is wrong. There's something unexplained or mysterious or ambiguous, right? There are these holes that you as a director or as an actor or as a dramaturg have to answer, right, when you're producing the play. And one of the things that I think drew us to Whitney's play, one of the things that's so remarkable about the play is that it opens up the play to a new perspective. It allows us to reapproach this play looking just really at the scenes between these two characters. And if you look at the play structurally, Lady Macbeth doesn't appear in Act 1 of the play. It's all outdoors. It's a civil war between Norway and, well, there's a civil war in Scotland and Norway is invading, right? And all this gets explained in your play brilliantly, Whitney. And then Lady Macbeth appears and the whole play changes. We go indoors to the castle at Dunsinane, and it becomes about these two people. And then again, she doesn't appear in Act 5, right? She vanishes.
I like that what Drew said. It definitely does go from outdoors to domestic. It becomes a domestic play very much. I agree with
Right.
that.
It shifts from a kind of public action to a very private action, and from a political action to a very psychological play. And what I love about Macbeth in Stride is that by cutting away these political scenes and just focusing in on the Macbeths, and specifically by starting with Lady Macbeth, we see the play through her eyes, and we're moving through this Shakespearean world with a feminist perspective, right? Or a feminine perspective, maybe. And all of a sudden, these holes in the play, or these holes in the character, that I think any woman actor who is approaching Lady Macbeth are something that we as an audience have to wrestle with. Of like, well, wait, why is that unexplained when she talks about breastfeeding a child? Have they lost a child? Right? What is the state of their marriage? Right? So it's so fascinating, this play, because it's almost like watching an essay about the play, along with re-experiencing Shakespeare's play through a new lens. And I think these are some of the things about, I mean, Macbeth was Lincoln's favorite Shakespeare play, right? It was Bill Clinton's favorite Shakespeare play. Like, this is a play that has attracted presidents for its study of political ambition, but also of these, I mean, Lincoln and Clinton both had troubled marriages, right? And there's something about the intersection of those two things that I think makes it a fascinating play for Washington, D.C. audiences specifically. I'm just watching you, Whitney, because I know it must be a weird thing to hear a dramaturg talk about a play you've written and spent so many years with. But I'm just talking about what I love about the project and how it expands upon these things that are unique in these characters and in this play by Shakespeare.
I mean, that's very interesting what you said, just the lessons of the play, the implications of the play, of the story, of the narrative, the power of the story, the implications there, and how it intersects with politics and political leaders, and the kind of cycle of governance that many places can be caught in, these kind of cycles of violence, are like everlasting. I mean, that's why we're all sitting around here talking about this play. This is a play written hundreds of years ago. And yet, my interpretation, it will not be the last. Just as we talk right now, I know a Latinx artist who's working on their own Macbeth. I know a hip hop artist who's working on their own Macbeth. Some of the most seminal kind of reimaginings of the piece have happened on camera and cinema, and there's something about it that has a major draw. And it is one of those ones that you encounter in the education system early. I feel like Macbeth, Othello, Romeo, Juliet, Twelfth Night, like those are the ones you encounter, and there's a reason. There's a reason there. But it is interesting that political leaders gravitate to this piece, because it is, the Macbeths, they're not good leaders, they're not good people. And are we learning, or are we secretly enjoying something that Shakespeare's talking about inherent to all of us? And I think that's kind of what starts to intersect with my humble attempt at analyzing the play from my perspective, and I self-identify as a Black woman, and it's like, what does it mean when you step into this role and there are so many unanswered questions, and yet you're supposed to give yourself to it? And it starts to open up a whole wormhole of questions for me, especially her suicide at the end. All of my favorite Shakespearean ladies don't survive the plays. I'd love to say that it's the Violas and everything from the 12 Nights and As You Like It that I love the most, but it's not. It's the Juliets, it's the Cleopatras, it's the Amelias, the Ophelias, and they just don't survive. And I think that there's a frightening lesson there, perhaps an assumption, perhaps an observation, and that's really where my inquiry begins.
It seems like when you have a very strong woman, or a woman who strays into the masculine world of politics, like Gertrude or Lady Macbeth or Cleopatra, or a woman who is in control of her sexuality and her agency, it tends to end tragically. And is that a comment that Shakespeare's making about his own times? Are those Shakespeare's own gender politics? Right? These are, to some extent, unanswerable questions, but I love the way Macbeth in Stride raises these questions, puts them on the table for us to wrestle with. And the other thing that is interesting is that we're doing Macbeth later this season with Ralph Fiennes and Indira Varma, right? So, this play is in conversation, this production is in conversation with that production later this season. But Leonie, you and I were talking this morning about how it's also in conversation with a play that just closed up the street at Sidney Harmon Hall with Evita, right? Which is another play about a woman in power and what power does to that woman's life. And I'm just wondering if you had more thoughts about this conversation that we were having off camera.
Yeah, in watching the life of Eva Peron and thinking of Macbeth in Stride and this journey of why do they want the power, right? Like, what is the reason behind that? And then you hear what I enjoy about Macbeth in Stride is that within the play, there's this examination of what her story was growing up and what she watched happen to women throughout her childhood and throughout her life. And how did that have an influence on the reason for wanting the power or the reason to wanting to create a shift or to change the story or to change the narrative because of what she witnessed along the way? And then looking at stories like Evita, where almost got to some power but didn't get to where she wanted to fully go. And did that have an impact on the stress that she was taking in, on the shorter lifespan, on all of these things? And you think about, just as people of color, people from marginalized communities, the constant stressors that take place that shift mortality rates, that shift the amount of the statistics in connection to diseases and all of these different things. So just thinking of how all those things tie together, and the want for power, the want to make a change, but is the support there for it to actually move, for it to actually cause a shift?
I sometimes like to, when we're talking about these things, when we're looking at these like mega characters, like Lady M and Eva, like those are mega characters, and they're aiming for things that are such an upper scale. And I think sometimes I like to de-escalate questions of power, because like even the word politics, especially in the time we're living in now, it overwhelms me. Like, what is politics? What is a political leader? How can we even begin to kind of unravel our political leaders and understand them? And so I think with Macbeth in Stride, while it is totally about all those larger things, Leonie and Drew, that we're talking about, for me, it's also about de-escalated moments of power. Any kind of want, any kind of need, whether it's the desire to not be interrupted when you're speaking, whether it's the desire to not be followed around the store by a security guard who's going to assume you're shoplifting, whether it's the desire to be able to have a child and keep your job, whether it's a desire to be able to take maternity leave. Like, when I start to really think about the kind of everyday battles that women encounter and the way that those battles don't always go our way, then I think Macbeth is a really interesting play, because every moment can be kind of abstracted to any kind of want for which you have stakes, and then I become even more interested in the play. Like, them killing the king is not killing the king. It could be getting the raise. It could be, keeping your health care, keeping your job. It could be any kind of thing. And then I get really invested in all of Shakespeare's plays, actually, when I kind of de-escalate the king and queen of it all sometimes and just think about what the implications are for the every woman or every man, our lives as civilians on the ground.
Well, there's this wonderful moment, Whitney, in the show when you've become king and queen, right? You've made it to the top, and you sort of ask the chorus of witches, what do I get to do now, right? And they're like, yeah, you have to throw dinner parties, and you have to deal with your husband who's depressed all the time and moody, and like it's a way of drawing our attention to, as you say, de-escalating the kind of feudalist trappings of the story, right, and foregrounding the kind of real life psychological and emotional stakes of like, oh yeah, even when we feel like we've reached the pyramid in our own lives of status, whatever those are, it doesn't mean that our obligations to other people and our problems in our relationships just magically go. In some ways, it actually makes those things worse, right? So there are so many moments throughout watching Macbeth in Stride where I feel, I don't know, deeply seen by you or deeply recognized by you. I relate to the play and to Shakespeare in a way that feels very immediate, where instead of navigating this kind of a complicated language and complicated stage dramaturgy, right? And I think that's one of the real achievements of your work and your adaptation.
Yeah,
Just
you do a beautiful job of, like, as Drew was saying, breaking it down and then blending in the story of a Black woman as well. So, and in addition to that, the music and how that shifts us and moves us within this story, and moments where you just say, what are you gonna, where you're asked, what are you gonna do next? How are you gonna push through? How are you gonna get to the next? And you go to the piano and you give it to us through song. Can you talk a bit about the musical journey? You know, it really feels like a rock concert. I think that's rare for Shakespeare. So can you dig into that a bit?
Thank you for asking. I mean, it's funny. It started with me sitting at the piano. Like the first iteration of the show, many moons ago now. It really has been such a journey to get here. I can't say that enough, how grateful I am to be on STC stage with our company. But it started with me at a piano, and then it began to me with a piano and a guitarist, and then it grew again with a bassist, and then it grew with the drummer, and the music has taken a lot of phases to find its sound. And I'm a lover of music in all its many forms, live music, studio music, everything. And I have so many influences that I feel have made it in the show. And it was a long journey to get composing on my own and just listen to the text and see what sounds I heard. You know, when I hear, is this a dagger, which I see before me, I hear Nine Inch Nails. When I hear Unsex Me Here, I hear Tina Turner. You know, when the witches are doing their witches brew, I hear Aaliyah and D'Angelo. And so all these kind of different things went into the gumbo pot, and with a lot of time and incredible collaborators along the way, because theater is a collaborative art. And so I have to send it up for the many instrumentalists and actors and just people that have supported the work as it was evolving, because it's evolved a lot, and especially the musical journey. It's just been a journey with a capital J. And you know, all of these women in Shakespeare's canon, they each sound like different kind of musical disciplines to me, and I really look forward to continuing this journey of just listening to the text and seeing how it comes out harmonically, you know.
Neil, I wonder, you're over there in the chat monitoring our is it YouTube chat? Yeah, I wonder if there's any comments or questions for Whitney, or if you indeed have a comment or a question for Whitney.
Well, there's a number of things. Yes. Rebecca is in the YouTube chat, wants to know what advice Whitney would give to young women who are cast as leads in Shakespeare plays, because so often there's so little information to go on. So where do you begin? Jennifer, who's a new subscriber, she admits that she bought it for the other version of Macbeth that's in our season. But she says, after Evita and Macbeth in Stride, I've gotten more than my money's worth. Dazzled. So that's what we love to hear, Jennifer. But she wants to know about Whitney's other plays that she has planned around Shakespeare characters. She'd love to know more about that. And then my question that I want to throw in is, it's Whitney White's world, and we're just living in it. Whitney just made her Broadway debut as a director. Obviously, our audience knows you as a director for the Amen Corner, but with Jaja's African hair braiding, how do you find the time? How do you find all the time to do everything that you want to do? Well, so those are the questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to start with the first one, because that is a thrilling question. What advice do I have for young women, or just any kind of people anyone in these lead roles? It's a very smart question, because I think Shakespeare is a really interesting thing, because people have spent so much time in scholarship, reading it, learning about it, traveling there, you know, to the UK to learn about it in productions. You know, it's something that people have been doing for hundreds of years. And so it can get a little sensitive. It can, you know, I feel like we theater makers can get a little proprietary over Shakespeare and act like we know the right way because we read whatever article or book or did whatever production XXX years ago. And I think my number one advice for someone taking on a lead female character is to just take your time and listen to your own instincts. There's the technical work. You have to achieve the meter. You have to understand the language. You have to immerse yourself in what these words mean. But there's a secret life to all these characters that only you can excavate. And one person's assumption of what the character has to be might not be what that character has to be. I always like to say there's a concentric circle between what the director or creator of the piece sees as the reality of the piece and what you know to be true about the piece. And your work should live in there. And that's my advice. So find the connection between what you know to be true and what your collaborators know to be true. And then you'll probably find something very exciting in there. But that the last bit of that phrase, we get all the world's a stage, that's a quote, a Shakespearean quote. That's a true thing. I do believe that Shakespeare, if you believe that to be one person, whatever you believe, was responding to the world around him and his company. And these are snapshots of what he considered to be real. So you should play it for real as well, you know? Yeah.
I want to hear Whitney answer the other two questions, but I would just add to that brilliant answer. You know, I had a great Shakespeare teacher once, Robert Blacker, a great dramaturg who since has passed on. And he would talk about how, you know, there's no such thing as a fixed interpretation of these characters. Like if you look at the great John Singer Sargent painting of Ellen Terry as Lady Macbeth, she's this kind of gothic, you know, like dragon woman stereotype, right? But like if you look at the language, you can find just as much justification for her being quite a kind of like sensitive and intuitive and loving partner for her husband, who knows him in some ways better than she knows herself. You know what I mean? And I think that what really resonates also with me, Whitney, is getting the chance to see you play Lady Macbeth on our stage and bring all of yourself to it, right? Playing it as if it's a real woman and really investigating this character that Shakespeare is imagining for us. And also imagining her as you would imagine her for us, right? And I think that those are some wise words of advice. Like bring yourself to the work, but also let the work in some ways teach you.
Yeah, that's really good. So that's a great, I wish I had asked someone that when I was trying to take these on when I was younger, that it was okay to bring myself to the work. So the second question about, also thank you for the shout out to Jaja's on Broadway. If you're in New York City, check out Jaja's African Hair Braiding by Jocelyn Bio. She's an incredible playwright and comedian and political thinker. And she's written this beautiful play that we've managed to get up on Broadway that's been extended. So check it out. But you know, I just feel full of gratitude. I really believe in theater in all its forms, off Broadway, Broadway, regional, and abroad. And I think it's very special that to this day, it's a discipline that gets us all in one room, watching the same thing in real time. I think that is becoming more and more a scarce commodity. So I really believe in the theater and what it can do for us as human beings, and also what it can do in terms of education. I don't think I would be the person I was today if I didn't get to read plays and think about them and consider how theatrical literature and theatrical writing comments and helps me understand the world in which we live in. So I don't know how I find the time. I just have a lot of passion, and I have an incredible family. My husband, my mom, my mother-in-law, they're all very supportive of me. And people like you guys. I mean, the theater community is a beautiful community. We really look after each other, and that's what makes all this work possible.
Was there a third one, Neil, that we forgot?
Yes, Jennifer wanted to know about the future plays that you're working on about Shakespearean.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know, the women I'm passionate about exploring with this approach of music and kind of refracted contemporary text, and working with my dear collaborators include Juliet, Emilia from Othello. Emilia is Iago's wife. She's often so forgotten, but it is her who outs the truth to that entire community. So Amelia from Othello, Juliet from Romeo and Juliet, and Miss Cleopatra. She's another queen that can't quite make it out of her own play alive. I mean, Cleopatra's interesting because she's only one besides Juliet that has the title, and yet she still can't make it out. So those are the women that I'm developing right now and look forward to bringing to the stage. And then there's one surprise at the end character who I won't mention, but you'll have to come to see.
Thank you. Well, Jennifer is hoping that they all come to DC. I'll just let you know that I agree with Jennifer. And actually, you mentioned education, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention that at 10 o'clock this morning, you were doing the show for 450 students who were in the theater, in the Klein, experiencing Macbeth in Stride. I'm curious what that was like, having that sort of audience attend the show.
Oh my goodness, it was wild. It was wild because they were so attentive, and you could really see how the Shakespeare grabbed them. You could really feel when they had questions. They were really into the music. The romantic plot points were very incendiary in the audience, but it was wonderful because I remember going to those shows. I remember going to those 10 a.m. shows when I was in high school, and I saw a production of at the Court Theatre in Chicago. And it's like one of the reasons why I'm directing and making art today. So those student shows are very special to me because they touch people in different ways. I can remember, in fact, every student show I ever saw. So I hope we made an impression on them similarly.
That one show, or what was your first experience with Shakespeare? Because it's so interesting that you're going on this journey and with these Shakespeare characters. So what drew you into Shakespeare?
It's not something I can really explain, and I think it's something a lot of artists are questioning right now. Why should we be learning Shakespeare? Are there other people that need to be added to the kind of theatrical canon? Should we be diversifying what we're studying? But it's like, it just drew me in. The first time I had to do a 50-line speech out loud, I think it was like Creon's. No, it was oh my God, the angry dad from Midsummer. What is his name, Drew?
Egeon.
Yes, the angry dad from Midsummer. It's just something happens to you physiologically when you have to go through that kind of rigorous work, and it's just kind of like a light went on, and I was like, I hope to do this someday. A light just went on. Art can be like that without being cheesy. You don't know what's going to turn you on, but when you find it, you should pursue.
And by the way, I love that scene in Midsummer Night's Dream because it is so like effed up and messed up. Like it's the morning that Theseus is going to marry Hippolyta in Athens, and this dad shows up and is like, if you don't force my daughter to marry this guy, I want you to put her to death. It's like the most horrible opening for a play that everyone thinks is this light comedy. And Theseus kind of turns to Hippolyta, and she's just staring at him, and he's like, what should I do in this situation, right? So it's a very intense speech to be assigned. I can only imagine what that must have been like, Whitney, in acting class.
Well, I couldn't do it. That's what drew me in. It's like, I thought I was on the horse and I kept falling off the horse because the meter and all of that was challenging. And then we all had to also learn the great one from Julius Caesar. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar. Friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears. That one. That was another one where I was like, gosh, there's something in the spirit of this language and this text that like I have to work on. That's a really great one.
I have a question for Whitney, if that's okay. I was watching Macbeth in Stride during preview week and watching the show kind of get put up on its feet and evolve in this thrilling way. And I noticed that there are witches in this play. There's accusations of witchcraft. There's kind of like feminine sexual agency going on. And it just made me think of The Crucible by Arthur Miller, which is I know is a play that we've talked about and that you love, and is another one of those plays that is often studied and assigned in high school. And I'm wondering, like, is that a conscious connection between these two works? Do you see a through line from the Scottish play or Macbeth in Stride with its focus on, because it's really the fear of the feminine, right, which is in this play, and the fact that the witches appear at the beginning of the play and then they disappear and then Lady Macbeth appears. It's almost like the witches and Lady Macbeth are trading places.
Are the one, yeah, I always like that theory that they are one and they are kind of connected.
Or that she gets the letter about the witches and then she calls on you spirits to turn her into a witch, right? Unsex me here and fill my thoughts full of the direst cruelty, right?
Yes.
And, you know, in Shakespeare's time, being a witch was a very serious accusation. It was a little bit like being accused of a terrorist act today. It was something that could
punishable by death. Yes.
Could be put on trial. You could be tortured. You could be put to death, right? So it's a very serious thing. And then by the end of that century, we're in Salem, we're in New England, we're in America, and the same thing is happening where there's this fear of the female, fear of female sexuality, fear of female power, and the kind of scapegoating of the feminine by associating it with witchery or with witchcraft or black magic. And this is just a theory that I'm coming up with on the spot, but it seems like you have a kind of brilliant reading of classical drama and the role of women that has been played throughout, like this male anxiety about female power and its association with magic and theatricality and witchcraft. Does that resonate with you at all?
I mean, first of all, it's a very flattering connection, but yeah, I definitely, I'm flattered that you see the connection, but yes, there's a complete through line from the way women are kind of personified in this particular piece of theater in Macbeth and how that goes directly to the Crucible. I mean, the Crucible is it's a stunning and frightening text to me. It's such a particular snapshot of kind of American paranoia and the roots of what, some scholars call settler syndrome and all of these things, and the role of the kind of perceived fear of witchcraft and unknown feminine power from Tituba to the young girls in that play. It keeps me up at night. I think there's a lovely connection there. And yeah, the Crucible, it's an incredible text. I think it's always teaching us things and we have a lot to learn from it.
Now, this production is part of the Shakespeare Everywhere Festival. And there's a lot of there's Fat Ham, there's a lot of productions happening on Winter's Tale, happening around town and in the DMV, as we like to refer to it. Can you speak a bit about your experience in DC and how the energy of DC, and also being a part of this time where all these theaters have come together and they're redefining classics?
Well, first of all, I just want to commend every theater that is every theatrical institution that's a part of this festival, because I think us banding together and finding cross-institutional collaboration is what's going to save us in this time. We've got to find more ways to do it. And so I just think the sheer feat of all these plays and theaters being willing to get them all in the same gumbo pot is incredible. And the bulk of these plays I'm super familiar with. I saw Fat Ham in New York. The playwright of that piece, James Imes, just absolutely brilliant. And it's just exciting, right? This is not dead theater. This is living theater that people are taking on themselves to interrogate, to chew up, to spit out how they like, and audiences are eating it up. I mean, Fat Ham won the Pulitzer. It's a stunning piece of work, and that's also by a Black artist. So I think it's incredibly inspiring, and the theater nerd in me is just gooped, as the kids say, that this festival's happening and that there's this many kind of contemporary takes on the classic Bard's canon.
Yeah, well, I think the good news is that instead of being in competition, all these shows are kind of lifting each other up. I know I have a family member who works at Studio Theater and Fat Ham has already extended Macbeth in Stride. I believe Neil was saying there's only 900 seats left for the full run of the show, which sounds like a lot, but is actually quite a small number of seats left to sell. Like it's almost completely sold out, which is amazing. There seems to be a very large appetite among Washington audiences, not just for Shakespeare, but for Shakespeare to be reimagined, to be interrogated, for Shakespearean stories to be retold in new ways and by new voices. And I can just say we couldn't be prouder that Macbeth in Stride is one of, multiple STC shows that are part of the festival. And really the first show that's part of the festival. I think yours is the one that premiered or opened first, Whitney. So you kind of were like the intrepid, trailblazing person, and the success of Macbeth in Stride and the reception that Macbeth in Stride has had is a tribute, I think, to your incredible talent and charisma, but also to this this phenomenon that theater is coming back in a big way in Washington, D.C., and we are one of the healthier theatrical ecosystems in the country, really. If you look around the country, all these other theaters are going on hiatus or closing, and that has not happened with a single theater in Washington. And I don't know if you have any insight.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason why is that the theaters here, you guys are open to lifting each other up, and it doesn't feel like it's about competition. Whenever I'm here, I feel like I'm getting invited to different shows. There's a wonderful spirit in the city, and it's that kind of willingness to lift each other up, I think, that is helping make the ecosystem healthy.
I do have one other question about Macbeth in Stride. It's a kind of dramaturgy nerd question, Whitney, if you'll forgive me. So towards the end of the play, and I don't think this is a spoiler because you already mentioned the suicide, right? That Lady Macbeth kills herself or she dies off stage, right? It's one of these cruxes in the play where we don't actually know what happened to her. We just get a messenger coming on stage and delivering the news, right? The Queen, my lord, is dead. And there's a way that every time I watch the show, I'm amazed by how surprising it is when those words are said. There's something that you've done where you've crafted this kind of liquid theatrical sequence from the mad scene to you talking to the audience about what it means to perform the mad scene and to live inside this spectacle of female suffering, right? That is made into a spectacle for our entertainment. And then this kind of, I don't know, the meaninglessness with which her death is then framed by Shakespeare, right? I think that's one of the words that is in the play, meaninglessness. And I just wonder if you could walk us through that a little bit, because it's such a fascinating and such a rich moment that feels so full of some kind of larger recognition, but I struggle to put it into words, and I'm just fascinated to hear you as the artist and playwright talk about it.
I think they're really getting into the meat of it now, and it just disturbs me greatly. It's like you're supposed to step into these roles and bleed for these roles, and yet the play pulls the rug out under you. What honor do you get? What respect does that character get? When there's such a driving force to the show and then they're just completely cut off. And I find it just, I mean, it keeps me up at night, that kind of cyclical narrative that, similarly to what you said, the spectacle of female suffering, we expect it. If there's a female character in a drama or a horror film, you expect to see her slash, you expect to see her go through this horrible thing. We hunger for it, we crave it, and it's very strange. And I think it's always such a surprise to me every time I read the play that she's so important. She's the one that's like, you're going to be king, you're going to be king. And then she's just gone without a care. And maybe that's Shakespeare kind of brilliantly talking about the futility of human effort at large, but maybe it's something else as well. So I think it's like, I don't have an answer, but it's just a deep question. And I know there's something about that, going back to that first question that was asked, what advice I had for someone playing one of these roles. It's like, it can be a very emotionally kind of vulnerable thing to give so much to yourself in a role, and then you're just swept aside for a bunch of guys to go battle in the forest. Like, that's kind of crazy. So I think it's just every night I'm grappling, I'm trying to understand, why does this narrative work that way? And how is it showing up in pop culture? I could sit here and name so many movies where like the female character just dies for no reason, and it doesn't feel useful. It doesn't feel juicy or good. It feels like, oh, that's the easiest thing, make a spectacle of female suffering and then sweep it aside. So I think, it's something we're investigating, me and the entire company. And I have to shout out, the company people working on this play with me. We've had so many wonderful conversations about this very question, from Tabby and Tyler, my directors, to Charlie, to Chelsea, Stacy, and Simone. We've had such a kind of fruitful collaborative experience surrounding this very question. Why is it this way? And does it have to be? And what does it mean for us now?
Well, and I would second all that and uphold all that you say. And even worse, it seems like Shakespeare is just using her death to motivate this like insight that Macbeth has, because that's, goes straight into one of his most famous speeches, and one of the most famous speeches in all of Shakespeare, where he says tomorrow, and he says she should have died hereafter. And then, which I guess means what? She should have died later, right? Which is a weird thing to say when your wife has died. And then he says tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Like, really? That's what you have to say about the death of your wife, dude? The love of your life is like, oh yeah, all life is meaningless. It doesn't, it doesn't matter at all. And I love that the play doesn't resolve these questions for us. It raises these questions for us to ponder from a new perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah, Neil, I'm watching you. I'm wondering if our chat is burbling away, or if there are some other questions that this second half of our conversation has stirred up.
Well, I think all the talk about all the Shakespeare going on in DC during the Shakespeare Everywhere Festival led April to ask, as someone who's just diving into Shakespeare, do you have any advice where to start?
Just keep going. I think that's kind of, I feel like I'm kind of iconoclast. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. And I used to get frustrated when people would tell me there's a right way to dive into Shakespeare, and there's not. You know what? Watch a movie. Watch Joss Whedon's version of the one with Benedict, Much Ado. Watch a film and then read it, and then see a play and then read it. But I think Shakespeare's meant to be digested in all forms, whether watching, reading, listening. I'm a nerd. I'm a podcast nerd, thanks to my husband. And you can listen to adaptations. I think everybody learns at a different rate, and everybody has different abilities. Some people are better at watching things. Some people better at listening. Some people better at reading. And I think it's just like, go where your heart desires. There is no wrong way. Just keep digesting it. I do like that Much Ado, though, very much. I find it to be fun.
I haven't seen it. I will now check it out based on your recommendation.
It's very straightforward, but I just like that he tried. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then there's the classic Baz Luhrmann, Romeo and Juliet, but subscribe to Shakes STC. That's the best way to start. How about that?
That's what I want to hear. That's the only way.
I mean, the other great thing about Shakespeare, and the great thing about the Shakespeare Everywhere Festival, is how frequently Shakespeare has been adapted across cultures. This semester in my class at Catholic University, I signed Kurosawa's film Throne of Blood, which is an adaptation of the Scottish play by, in a Japanese post-World War II context that moves the play to samurai Japan. And it's a fascinating movie because he's using indigenous Japanese theatrical traditions, but he's also being very Western at the same time, right? And Shakespeare, I think, for whatever reason, is one of those figures who lends himself to cross-cultural adaptation or intercultural adaptation. So, Fat Ham, maybe that will be a gateway for some people to read Hamlet, or Macbeth in Stride will be a gateway for other versions of Macbeth, right? It's all about, what you said, Whitney, finding something that feels natural to you and using that as a guide for further exploration. Although I would not recommend Pericles to start with.
Pericles is a tough one, even for me. And I was in a production of Pericles. I played that evil queen that tries to kill the baby. Yes, I played an evil queen in Pericles, if my memory serves right. It's still a tough one.
Cymbeline is also Cymbeline and Pericles are quite tough, I would say.
Tough.
So maybe not those two. Or Troilus and Cressida.
No, these are good. See, Drew, don't do that. What if she reads it and she cracks the code, you know?
You're absolutely right. Don't listen to me. Go with your heart. Follow your, let your heart be your guide. Leonie, you're looking thoughtful. Is there you know, we've never talked about your first experience with Shakespeare.
Gosh, I mean,
Wasn't
it's
it
been
at
embedded
STC?
for so long. I think there's been different iterations, but the first time I really had to jump in was my theater teacher, Dr. Vixilio. I needed some extra credit, and she was like, "If you join Shake Troop, you can get the extra credit because otherwise, I wouldn't have joined Shake Troop, to be honest." And I joined it, and I ended up really liking it, and then also did it in forensics. So it'd take those like long Shakespeare monologues and different monologues and perform them in competition. And that was like really where I got into it and won some awards and some things and kept moving and kept moving. And I also was a part of one of the programs at Shakespeare Theatre Company when I was in high school. So yes, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked about the production of the Oedipus plays starring Avery Brooks as one that you saw, that you were lucky enough to see.
Oh yes, that was the first time I saw an all black cast in a classical production, and to see it at Shakespeare Theatre Company and to have it, it's like half of the cast of the Cosby Show was in that production. But I didn't know Earl Hyman was a classical actor at that time, so it allowed me to dig into some of these actors and other work that they had done. So it was great to see that production. That was while I was a student at Howard.
All right. Well, so to summarize, Whitney White in Macbeth in Stride, an amazing show. It must close October 29th. There are limited tickets available. So run, don't walk to the STC website right now, if I can mix that metaphor. This is a rare opportunity to see a really extraordinary, critically acclaimed piece of theater that is also proving to be a smash hit with audiences. Is there anything I'm leaving out there, Whitney?
Yeah, don't just come for me, come for everybody. There's an incredible band, an incredible cast, and everybody's really on fire in this production. So it will be something that will be worth your time. So come on out.
And you know, you say that there's actually also a brilliant transformation of the lobby space by our marketing and communications team, turning the Landsberg or the Klein lobby into a rock club with a true rock club wall. And it's a little piece of DC trivia, but there was a legendary DC hardcore and go-go show in 1983 in that same building. It was Trouble Funk, and the last show of the band Minor Threat was on the stage, Whitney, where you are performing Macbeth in Stride. So in some ways, this is history coming full circle. If you want to travel back in time to when the Landsberg was hosting, the Landsberg Art Center, as it was called back then, was hosting underground music. I feel like you're bringing that spirit back, along with the history of great classical work on our stages. So yeah, the Macbeth in Stride running through October 29th. It's an amazing show. And please join us also in December for As You Like It at Sidney Harmon Hall, which is the other STC entry into the Shakespeare Everywhere Festival. And also, obviously, in February at a site to be determined or to be announced of Macbeth, starring Ralph Fiennes and Indira Varma, along with all the other amazing shows and programs in our season. So that's it for me, STC Associate Director Drew Lichtenberg, signing off. I want to thank Whitney, Neil, Leonie for sharing this wonderful time with us tonight. And to all of you at home, wishing you a very good night.